is too old and crappy.
Oh, bummer.
To death.
Yep.
So see if you can connect it to the owl.
The ports are wrong.
Yeah, I have an old.
We can do.
What's this port right
this
here?
one?
This is a lightning bolt.
Okay, then yeah, just plug it in the USB right next.
Okay. Yeah, I have a computer from the dawn of time.
My computer crashed when I hear the owl.
Yeah. Okay. Let's hope mine does not.
There we go.
Okay. All right. Okay. Let me shut down something.
So then now go to is this thing on? We might have to press the button. Yeah, there you go. Try that. And then there you go, Meeting Owl Pro. And then same thing
Whoops.
with microphone Meeting Owl Pro. And then one more on the microphone. And then speaker Meeting Owl Pro. There you go. And then the last thing is just share your screen with presentation.
Share my screen.
On the spot with new technology.
There you go.
You did it.
Perfect.
Winning.
All right, not bad.
Okay. Enter.
Ta-da, there we go.
Yay. All right. I'll just move this. All right. Hi, everybody on that, and hi, everybody in here. Okay. So, what I was going to talk to you guys about today, first of all, is one true thing, which is a way for us all to get to know each other in a real storytelling sense. So, I want you to all tell me one true thing about yourself. Fair warning, I'm going to come around the room this way. So the rules of this, you can't tell me where you were born, how old you are, or what your research is. I want to hear something about you. I'm going to give you two, so you can kind of get a sense of what I'm talking about. Okay, so two true things about me. One is sometimes if there's a show I want to watch and it's on a streaming service I don't have, I will sign up for the free trial, binge the show, and cancel before it's watching. Another true thing about me is I love all the books by Terry Pratchett, and then he died and they released one more and I haven't read it because they can't bear for it to be the last one. So it's on my shelf and I don't know if I'll ever read it. Okay, so those are two true things about me. Elise.
One true thing about me is that when I was a kid, my mom encouraged me to eat dirt.
One true thing, I don't know how to bike.
Okay.
I never learned. Well, I tried to learn, I fell like 3 times and I was like, I have it. So I've never learned, and maybe my daughter will teach.
I'm like blanking on all sorts of stuff. So I graduated from a correctional high school.
Okay.
I dislike anything to do with the water, but I've done every water sport possible in the hope that I like water things, but I don't.
I really like high fantasy, and particular Name of the Winds.
Say it, it's a little bit louder.
High
Fantasy, I hear.
High fantasy, in particular. So Name of the Wind is like a series. There's like King Killer Chronicle, and it's been 13 years since. And there's a third book coming out. The author says eventually. So a little disillusioned, but.
What is high fantasy?
Oh boy. I'm about
Okay, maybe that's too long.
No, it's just like
We'll save that
I
for
can go
lunchtime.
into like urban fantasy versus modern.
Okay, we'll save that for lunchtime. How about that?
I was just gonna say I have quite strange joints, like my shoulder. I went to a Pilates class once, and they were like, "You are strange."
I received a text from someone a couple days ago, and it was a picture of Bono from U2, and it was a headline saying, Bono reveals that he has a half brother, and they said, Jeremy, I knew it was you all along, because I've been a big U2 fan for like 30 years. So I'm not actually his half brother, but I kind of felt like it.
I don't know if I'm what's at the Edge in Burlington.
He's on the Environmental Solutions Initiative Advisory Board.
Yeah,
so,
he was having a meeting in the office next to mine, so I definitely like collared him on the way.
Yeah. I'm still trying to get John Fernandez to have another meeting with him that I can go to.
The Edge.
Let's get the two guys who are cowering online.
Yes,
too.
okay, my cowering folks. Augustine, you want to go first?
So for me, I think I'm drawn to the underdog, and I'm terrified of heights.
And Elvis?
Yeah, the one truth about me is that in the past 2 months, I caught both influenza A and COVID was much better for me.
Okay, solid reviews for COVID. So the whole point of that exercise is if you look at everybody's faces right now, it's exactly that, right? It's to get us to learn things about each other that we don't normally know. And that's what storytelling is. So if you came into this today thinking, I don't have any stories to tell, I really don't want to go to this workshop, you just told me a tiny story, right? And all the information around that thing that you told me, there's a story there, right? Like I can tell you a whole story about like how I first discovered Terry Pratchett and what it was like when I got to university to study English and they were like, this isn't literature. And I was like, I disagree. There's whole stories within every single one of the facts that you told. Like, I'm very curious if you hate water sports and you've been in every single one, right? There's gonna be a whole story that you tried them, how did you feel? Like, why did you sign up? Like, did someone encourage you to do it? Like, there's stories within those stories. So if you're ever stuck about a story to tell about yourself, something that is true about you is a good place to start. Okay, so, I also think this thing didn't work on my ancient computer.
Oh, that one won't.
Okay.
Yeah, that one.
All right, I will just
But
probably
you just have to click on PowerPoint somewhere. There it is.
There we go. Okay, stories. Humans love stories. We love books and film and television and podcasts, and there's a reason that we do. It's because stories are designed to be interesting. They are told in a way that makes you want to keep listening, and crucially for this, it helps you remember them. And that's the sort of thing that is most useful about storytelling, is when you think about the books and the movies and the podcasts you've listened to, the things you've read, the things you've watched, you remember them in greater detail than you often remember the details of your own lives day to day. We experience our lives, we live them, but we don't think about them the same way we think about books and movies and TV. And that's because it's not presented to us in the same way. It's not as memorable. We just go to work, we get lunch, maybe we bump into a friend, but we don't remember it in the same way. So this is what storytelling asks you to do. It asks you to go back, think about the things that have happened to you, the events of your life, the choices you made, and really examine that, live a more examined life, and make something from it. And that's what we're going to do today. Now, when we're looking at stories.
Sorry to interrupt, but could you make sure I don't think we are seeing the right screen. So we are still looking at page 2.
Oh, do you see the white screen?
Probably the presenter view is sharing the.
Oh, it's showing. So what do you see now?
I am still seeing a slide 2. I think it's a presenter view.
Might be just kind of frozen. So maybe just try to stop sharing and share again. And if you're okay with it, another thing is the sharing thing's up here. Could be try that.
You never see really easier.
It's just reminding me. Okay, so let's try again. Stop share.
So what do you see now?
I'm seeing slide 1 right now.
Okay, that's good.
Slide 2.
It does.
But they're probably seeing what's on your laptop. Is that what's happening?
Yeah, so this is slide 2. This
Right.
is slide 3.
So we are still seeing slide 1.
Just a lag.
It might be just a lag, so,
I can also go on my computer.
no, I think, just keep going. This is why you're supposed to be here in person.
You're gonna miss my fun graphics, but we'll try to roll.
You have a strong narrative, so.
Yeah, strong
narrative. That's fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when we hear stories, spoken word stories, we're looking for a few fundamentals. One is we want to understand what's happening as we hear it. If you are reading a book and you miss something, you can turn back a few pages. If you are watching a movie and you get distracted by your phone, you can rewind. When you are speaking, when you're telling a story, when you're giving a presentation, there is no rewind button. So you need to anticipate the questions that the audience is going to have about the story you tell before they have them. Because if you say something that then makes their mind wonder, like, wait, why was she on a boat? Doesn't make any sense. She didn't tell me why she's on a boat. Then they're not listening to your story anymore. They're thinking about why you're on the boat and you haven't explained why. It's the same concept of like people can't read and listen at the same time. So you need to anticipate those as you go along. Next is we want all stories to have a point. We want there to be a reason why you're telling it, the beginning, the middle, and the end. So that might be a journey, it might be a challenge, it might be an adventure. What is behind all of these is drive, right? There's a reason all of these people are on this adventure. Now, all of these are pretty epic. I'm not saying you have to fight a Darkhold or run your figure through a nebula, whatever this is, whatever he's doing. But what's driving you, even if it's small, is what makes the story compelling. The final thing that we want to think about is we want the story to resolve, which means absolutely no cliffhangers. If you are going to set something up, you're going to pose questions, you want to resolve those by the end. This isn't a space for, and tune in next time to see what happens next. We want to answer all the questions we pose at the start. So the thing about storytelling is we want information in a way that we can process it and remember it as we hear it. Now, if I ask you to think of an event, like the first time you went surfing, even though you hate surfing, or the time you embarrassed yourself in high school and you thought you'd never live it down, or like the last time you saw your best friend before COVID meant you couldn't see them for a year. Like you remember that event. And then there's all this information around that event, right? Time of day, like what you were wearing, if you were, like the smell of the food you just ordered in the restaurant, there's all this information, all these details, things people said to you, choices you made. And they, when you first remember the event, are going to look a little bit like this. All the information is there, but it's kind of a mess. And so storytelling is about making it look a little bit more like this. We want it to make sense, we want it to be easy to follow, and we want it to be as pleasing to listen to as this is to look at, especially after you look at the previous slide. Gives me an itch. Okay, so.
You know these aren't ordered properly.
I know. I'm like, bless these are some this is my kids' crayons. So I'm gonna leave my kids' crayons up here. This represents the slight imperfections.
Good, that's good. Not all the labels we give to this.
Yeah,
Opportunities for improvement.
That's the thing, and it's different every time you tell it. You don't want to read just don't be a robot reading the script. Okay, so now I'm going to tell you a story. So this is a true story that happened to me. It's going to take me about 5 minutes, and then we're going to look at how that story is structured. Okay, so the plane was coming into land. I was on my first solo business trip for my new job, and this was my first time out on my own. I was about 23 years old, and I was feeling pretty good about myself, if I'm honest. And the thing is, like all the way through university, I had waited for someone to tap me on the shoulder and pull me on one side and say, you're just what we've been looking for MI5, like we want you to work for us. Because that's how you get those jobs, right? You don't apply, someone comes and taps you on the shoulder. And I honestly had that moment in graduation wearing my robe where I was like, oh, like no one tapped me on the shoulder, and like today would probably be the last day that they would do it. So I was like, okay, so I'm not gonna be James Bond, but I had gone out and I got a pretty cool job. And so that day, like coming off the plane, it was in Jordan, in the Middle East, it was the middle of the night. I was wearing a suit. I had business cards with my name on. Like I felt pretty cool. Tiny bit James Bond. So I get off the plane and I stride into immigration, and there's a long line, and I'm right at the back. And I get to the front, and the man says, "Okay, fill out this form. I need your passport. And you need $10 for the visa on arrival." And I look at my wallet, and I don't have $10. I had $5, and then some change in like different currencies. So I tried to like cobble together the equivalent of $10, and he gave me a hard pass that that's not allowed. And so I said, "Do you have an ATM I could use?" And he said, "Look around the room. Do you see an ATM in this room?" I looked around the room and I did not see an ATM in the room, but I did for the first time like clock the man on the side with like a very large gun. And so I sort of turned back with like my best smile and said, "Okay, is there an ATM anywhere in this airport?" And he said, "Yes, there's an ATM. The ATM is in departures. Technically, departures is in Jordan, and you can't go into Jordan until you pay $10 for the visa on arrival." So I said, "How about I give you my credit card and my PIN number? Is there someone that would go to the ATM for me?" And I think that was the moment that he realized that I was quite desperate, because that's not a thing that you should do. And he goes and he talks to me, he gives a big sigh, and he goes to talk to the man with the gun, and then he comes back and he says, "Here's what's going to happen. You leave your passport here with me. You're going to go through that door. You'll be at departures. End of the corridor. There's an ATM. Be quick." And I thank him profusely. And the man with the gun unlocks the door, and I run out into departures, and it's duty free. So there's like bright lights and Clinique counters and perfume smells, and there's giant Toblerones and just people shopping. And I run past all of it. And at the end, there's this ATM. And it's one of those freestanding, brightly colored ones that is going to charge you like $5 to take out $10, whatever it takes. I don't care. So I punch him, I put my card, I punch in the number, and it says, "Unable to contact your financial institution." It's fine, I have other cards. I try the next card. "Unable to contact your financial institution." I try every card in my wallet, and none of them work. And I get down to the last card, and I really don't want to use it because it's the company American Express. And they had said, never ever withdraw cash on the company American Express because it charges you this huge amount of interest. And I thought, you know what? I will just pay them back. Like, I will explain what happened, I will pay them back. I put the card in, I punch in the number, it says, "Unable to contact your financial institution," and then it eats the card. And I start punching like all the numbers, like trying to get it back, but like pressing cancel, and it doesn't work. The card is gone. I turn around and I see a different ATM, and it's a different color, so it's a different bank. So I'm like, well, I have nothing to lose. I'm going to try all my cards in this one. So I run over and I go to put my card in, and I realize that the lights are off at the machine and it's dead. That's it. No more cards, no more machines. So I start walking back past the Toblerones and the Clinique counters, and I start thinking, like, I don't know what happens now, right? Like, this has never happened to me before. And I had a flight out of Jordan, but it was in a week's time. And the only card I had with a high enough credit limit to buy a new flight just got eaten by that machine. And I was like, I've never been deported. I don't know how it works. Do they keep me in this room? Do they put me in a cell? And I think this is why MI5 never tapped you on the shoulder. Like, James Bond would always have $10 for his visa on arrival. And I knock on the door, and the man with the gun unlocks the door and lets me back into the room. And I go back up to the counter, and by this point, like, there's no one else left in the room. And I start explaining what happened, and I'm trying to look very professional, like this happens all the time. But as I'm explaining what happened, like, my voice starts to speak faster and faster, and like my voice starts to break, and my suit just feels too big and stupid, and I was like, I know I'm gonna cry, and I kind of spill out the whole story, and then I just look at the man behind the counter, and he looks at me, and he looks down at my passport, and he gives another big sigh, and he reaches back around behind him, and he pulls out his wallet, and he took out a $10 bill from his wallet and put it on the counter in front of me, and I went to say something, and he gave me the signal, like, don't say anything. So I'm pretty sure what he was doing was not technically legal. He stamped my passport, he paid for my visa, he handed the passport back to me, and he said, "Welcome to Jordan." So that's a true story from when I was 23. Immediate responses to that story. What did you think of it?
3 times, it's still stressing me
Yeah,
out.
that's what you know. Yeah.
It's descriptive enough to visualize it without having been there.
Yeah, I really want you to see, especially certain parts of it, like a movie, almost in your head. So that's great.
Sounds familiar, like it sounds like things that have happened to me. Just not like quite the same way, but yeah, similar, like just one thing on another.
And that's the thing is like, I can bet that no one in this room has had exactly that experience. But what you will recognize is some of the emotions and the feelings in there, right? Like the stress, the like sudden feeling of like, well, maybe I'm not quite as cool as I thought I was. The airport is also a super familiar and very stressful location that feels like very familiar to all of us. So yeah, I want to kind of, when you're listening to it, spark some recognition, even if you never showed up at a job and put out $10 for either on arrival. Okay.
I was gonna say, I thought you had a good use of suspense,
Mhm.
right? Like it wasn't clear how it was going to resolve itself.
Yeah, and I think that is something that, like when I think about the story, when you really strip it down to what it is, it's 10 minutes and nothing bad really happens, right? Like I'm fine. But in that moment, and immediately, like obviously in the years following it, the reason I decided to turn it into a story is it did matter to me. It felt really suspenseful and it did kind of challenge who I thought I was as a person. So my job is to take what is actually a 10-minute blip where I'm actually okay and communicate how important it felt to me at the time. Okay, all right. I'm gonna now talk about a map for this story. So the easiest way to tell a story is in linear time. Remember how it went and tell it in that order. You can tell stories where you jump around in time, but for getting started, we're going to think about it just in this linear fashion. So first of all, when you start a story, we need to know at the beginning who you were at the start of the story. So I need to tell you guys a bunch of things that you need to know for the rest of the story to make sense. So what are the things I tell you at the start?
You just graduated.
Mm-hmm.
23.
I'm young, young, just graduated.
Just got a job that makes you feel good.
Yeah, like I'm feeling pretty swaggery in my suit, for sure. Anything else?
Also a little disappointed that you didn't get something else
Right.
first. Yeah.
Right, like I clearly have an inflated opinion of myself at the start of the story. I really like, I should have been a secret agent, but this will do.
I think I'd characterize it as like kind of idealistic.
Yeah, that's very generous.
Yeah.
I like that one. So yeah, and then the other things I tell you is like where I am in space and time, right? You need to know that I'm in an airport in the middle of the night, I'm in a foreign country, kind of out of my element. So I tell you those things very, very quickly. It's almost like a laundry list because you need to know all of those things so that what happens next makes sense. So in storytelling, we have the and then one day moment, the inciting incident. And this is the thing that happens to a protagonist in the story that pushes them out of their everyday and propels them into a new narrative, and how they respond to what happens at this moment. That's the story. So Harry Potter lives in the cupboard under the stairs, right? And then one day an owl shows up and gives him an invitation to Hogwarts. That's the inciting incident. Without the owl, there is no story. He stays under the cupboard, in the cupboard under the stairs forever. It's a really different type of story. So what is the thing that happens that is the inciting incident in this story?
Didn't have $10.
Yeah, that's it. If I had $10, I would have paid the money, stamped the passport, I'd go to my hotel. There's no story. Possibly I still think I should be James Bond. So this moment, this thing that pushes it forward is really important. Next is what's at stake. And this goes back to what we were just talking about with Jeremy's comment, right? That what is at stake here really ends up being quite low, because I'm fine, everything works out. But I need to communicate to you like why it was important to me at the time. What are some things I do to kind of raise the stakes of this story? Yeah.
You describe it, there's like, I think what shows how focused you were on getting the $10 is that you describe there's like all these smells and sounds and sights and everything, and then you run past all of it. And I think that kind of gives us, because like we've all experienced tunnel vision for something, and I think
Right.
that raises the stakes of getting the $10 and not getting deported.
Yeah, like I'm telling you that I panicked without telling you that I'm panicked. Or like you know how stressed I am without me saying, I was very stressed, right? Absolutely. Are there any other stakes raising bits?
Get with again.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing.
I mean, it's a cheap shot, but yeah, there's I feel like, I mean, this was also a long time ago, and I feel like now I wouldn't blink twice at a man with a giant gun in an airport. But at the time, I remember being like, oh. So yeah, there's not always a man with a gun in all stories, but yes, that kind of raises the stakes. I also let you know that it's like my first time out on my own with my job, right? And I mentioned a couple, like I don't want, they told me not to use this credit card, like, you know, it's like need to impress work. And then also probably there's my sense of who I am, like squabbling up and tight in my suit, but I feel pretty good about myself. So that's what's at stake, and that's what I have to win or lose in the story. And so as long as you can feel with me that I have something to win or something to lose, then you're going to be kind of with me and feel the stakes of that story. Next, all stories have to have some kind of change for them to be compelling. And change can be a tricky word in this situation because I'm not suddenly turned into a new person, right? But I have a shift in my understanding, a shift in the way I see the world. And so change can be something really small. It can be something big. I remember teaching a workshop at MIT actually a couple of years ago where this woman told me a story about how she's terrified of needles. She's going to give birth. And she was like, I absolutely cannot have any kind of painkiller because I can't stand needles. And then she had a really complicated birth. She ended up having to have all these medications that had to be needles. And she was like, but there's no change in my story because I'm still terrified of needles. So where's the change? It was like the change is you did something you thought you would never do. Like when it really came down to it, when it was like, your choice is get this or like your baby is in danger, she did it. So there is a change in that. So it might not always be what you think it is. It can be something more subtle. And finally, who you are at the end. It sounds simple, but it's really important. We want to know who you are at the end. We want to have a sense of what is different. So what are some things I do in the story to tell you who I am at the end?
Feel like your suit's bigger than.
Yeah, the suit's too big. There's two things. There's the suit and the moment where I'm like, James Bond would have 10 intelligence visa on arrival, which I love also because that's such a mundane idea of James Bond paying his visa on arrival. But, those two things, we call that signposting in storytelling. So I purposefully embed those in the beginning so I can bring them back at the end and you can see how my understanding of those things has changed. When you're working on a story, you can also start with this. Think, what are the things that are true about me now? And that was how I developed the story. I was sort of thinking like, I want to work on a story. What are some things that are true about me now? And landed on this sort of understanding of who I am and who I'm not. And then I was like, so what, if I go back in time, what was the moment when I wasn't like that? And what was the thing that changed it? So it's kind of like working backwards, which you talked about in your presentation last time, like knowing what you want your message to be and working backwards. Any questions on that? Also to folks online, if you can you see my slides now?
But my a question that I had that it isn't really relevant, but I can't help but be curious about is like what your job was.
So I purposely leave that out because
I figured it's fine.
Yeah, it's because it's very distracting.
Yeah.
I had the world's best job at the age of 23. My job was to fly around the world, stay in luxury hotels as a secret shopper, and write a report.
Yeah. But that's like its own story. Right? Like you're worried about people like going off on a tangent.
So
because like in particular, that's when you were going through this whole thing, I felt like that was relevant to what's at stake. Right? Like, is this a reflection on the degree to which you can do your job? Which I figured you didn't include it because it wasn't really.
Yeah.
But that's what I couldn't.
And that's the trickiest thing. Also, when I was working on the story, I was working to tell it in a 5-minute show. Yeah. And I tried to answer that question that was going to come up in people's minds. Yeah. And I could not shoot it in. Yeah. But yes, great job. recommend it if you fancy a career change. So,
Right.
yeah.
That raises the stake on your loss of credit card, for sure.
Right,
Something,
yeah.
'cause,
Company
you know,
credit
you gotta
cards.
pay.
Yeah, I paid with this like bananas American Express limit that a 23-year-old should never have had. So yes, that was my ridiculous job. Okay, so what do you think the story is about? And this isn't a trick question.
Learning who you are and yes, like
Yeah.
understanding what your current situation is.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it definitely has a kind of Bildungsroman, like growing up, like becoming a little bit less ridiculous, maybe. So yeah, it's definitely about figuring out who you are, and that's probably where I was when I wrote it. Now, what can inform a story is you can tweak it in different ways, and so when you think about a story, you remember it first with what happened. Like, I remember this thing that happened at the airport. The next layer beneath that is how it felt. How did it feel to go through that, and why is it memorable? Like, I've been stressed in airports many times. I don't remember them the way I remember this one. Beneath that is the theme. And once you have the theme of your story, you can work your way back about what you put in and what you take out. Other themes that have been suggested to me for this story are the kindness of strangers. I was just gonna say that. Yeah, and it's like I could go back, right, and retell the story and kind of punch up the interactions with this man more. I could also frame it with like, what am I normally like interacting with people in service roles? Have I been in a service role? How did I find it? Like, and frame it in a different way to talk more about that. The other thing the story is which I did not realize when I wrote it, is it's a white privilege story, right? It's a young white girl in a foreign country, and I'm in trouble and someone helps me, right? Like, that doesn't happen for everybody. And so there are lots of different ways you can come at this story and things you would alter and change and shift in order to bring those out. So the theme in presentation is obviously the natural counterpart is your key message, right? Like what you want to put in to inform your audience, what you want them to take away from it. You want to pick things that you can include, pick things you can take out to like emphasize that theme. Other points to make about telling a story is, I can't tell you the blow-by-blow 5-minute version of this in 5 minutes if I include all the details, right? So you have to think about what you're going to tell in summary and what you're going to tell in scene. And it's picking the parts that are important that you can use for dramatic effect that you were going to tell in scene. So in summary, I tell you, I'm 23, new job, Jordan, middle of the night, just got off a plane, think I should be James Bond. I tell you all that very quickly. And then when I get to the ATM, I slow it right down, right? Like it's like I run down the corridor, I see the bright lights, I smell the perfume, I get to the ATM, I put the card in, I punch in the number, like I'm going step by step by step. And so choosing a place in the story where you can expand the scene is really important. If you're telling a 5-minute story, like we're gonna work on today, you've got 1, maybe 2 scenes that you can put in. Next is show versus tell. And you know how we talked about how I said I was panicked, but I didn't tell you I was panicked? It's more memorable to show rather than to tell. So like I didn't tell you at the start of this that I'm a bit cheap, but I showed you I'm a bit cheap because I cancel my streaming services before they charge me. It's more memorable that way. The strongest example I've ever heard about this was a person in the workshop who said, when I was growing up, my mom was really mean. And we were like, okay, well, like how was she mean? Like, show us. And he said when he was young, his mom had this flower shop, and she said that if he worked in the flower shop all summer, during his summer break, then she would buy him this remote control race car that he wanted for Christmas. So he works in the flower shop all summer. Christmas rolls around, he runs downstairs, there's a box under the tree, and it's the right size and shape, and he rips open the paper and opens the box, and inside are all the things that he had broken in the flower shop during the summer. I mean, that's so mean. It's so mean. And the reaction of like everyone going, like.
Was your last name Dursley? That's what I was saying.
It's very out there. And so like that is the That's what I mean by show versus tell. If you want to bring across an emotion in a story, don't say, I felt stressed. Don't say, my mother was mean, show it. And that way it will stick with people and you get that visceral reaction. Any more questions? All right, now you guys get to do something. Would you like to take one of these around? So you get 2 sheets. One is a story brainstorm sheet that has the questions on it that I sent around in the email. And the other sheet is those 5 blocks that you saw before, the elements of the story. And what I want you to do is, depending on where you're at, brainstorm ideas for a story. Or if you have an idea of what you might want to work on already, take the sheet of paper with the 5 blocks and try and map it out. So try and think of what you would put for each of those blocks. What you need to tell us at the beginning, what the inciting incident is, what's at stake, how you change, and where you land at the end. Because it's a 5-minute story doesn't mean you have to have a minute of content for each block. That's not how it works. You just need to hit each of those points in some way for the story to make sense. How do you do this time? I'm gonna give you guys like 8 to 10 minutes.
Pick one of these.
Yeah, so if you have an idea of a story you want to tell already, you can jump ahead and just start mapping it out, or you can brainstorm ideas if you're not quite there yet.
What I missed, which one do we start with, or?
So these are just the same storytelling questions from the email. So if you haven't got an idea, you can try brainstorm some. And if you do have an idea, you can start.
Okay. And so for our 2 guys on the owl,
You can email them.
Sure. Why don't you send it to me and then I'll send it.
We'll trust that we'll get that.
亲爱的，我这边还没结束，你要不先弄你的那个？你先弄你吃饭什么的，就是我这边我不知道他可能是说不定12点，他现在还在进行中，他们又在做什么 exercise，我们就在这儿，我跟 Augustine 就在这儿瞎看，我俩就在这儿啥都不知道该咋的办，但现在跑了好像也不行。OK，yeah，that's what I'm trying to say.
Odyssey and Elvis, you should have them now.
Where do you send that?
I just sent it to you via email.
Okay, let me check.
It should be on its way.
Got it. Thank you, Jeremy.
Sure.
我们还在做练习呢。我的个亲娘嘞，傻逼呀！ 所练习。你先弄你的啊，你不管我啊。
Okay, I know there's still furious scribbling going on, but I want to move on so we don't run out of time. And finish at your leisure because these are going to keep notes for reading. So when you develop a story and it's not always easy, right? It's not going to come like you just map it out one go and it's perfect, right? You're going to take some time, you can go back and work on it. These are some things to keep in mind when you do. What's at stake for you? Make sure we know why the story is important to you, even if it's just a tiny little thing about, it's the first time I ever failed a test, but ultimately it's fine because now you're a researcher at MIT, but it mattered to you for that reason, right? Whatever that reason is, you've got to communicate that reason. What do you hope for or what do you want? Do you get it, right? This is the drive of the story. I want to get my visa and go to my hotel and not lose my job. That's what I want, and that drives the story. Do you get it is a crucial thing in storytelling. You don't have to always have a happy ending. You are free to tell a story where you do not get the thing that you want, or it's ambiguous, it doesn't turn out the right way. Not all stories are happy, and that's fine. Where is there a possible scene, and can you add detail? And when I'm talking about detail, it's the things that make the story as you hear it become a movie in your head, right? That you see me running down that corridor in Departures. The movie in your head is important because if someone is with you and they're like watching you in their mind, they're paying full attention. So I give you things that are like very familiar. So like everyone knows those giant Toblerones, and everybody knows the way like they kind of spray you with perfume when you go through the airport, right? Those things I'm doing so that you remember and you see it. How do you change? And remember, you might have to dig for this. It might not be obvious, but there needs to be some kind of change or shift for the story to really work. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to talk to each other about the stories. I think we have enough for pairs, and I can pair with you, Elise. So you do not have to tell each other a perfect 5-minute version because you're probably not going to have that yet, and that's fine. I want you to tell the person you're paired with the broad strokes of your story. So say, my story is about when I was a kid, we would all walk around from school past this bridge, and all the big kids would jump off the bridge into the water, but I was too scared and they made fun of me. That's what my story is about. So the job of the person who is paired with you is to listen and ask questions to help develop and bring that story out. So if there's a part where you're like, you mentioned the bridge, like how high was this bridge? I wondered about what's the water like below? Is it actually safe? Like, are you scared for a legitimate reason or not? Like, ask that kind of question. If the person gives you a bit that's suddenly very vibrant, that stands out, that you remember, tell them where they're doing it right. Like I saw it really clearly when you described standing on the edge and the way your toes felt on the edge of the bridge. That bit was very vivid. Keep that in, that kind of thing. And if your partner is stuck and is like, I have this story, but I don't know where it's going, these are the kind of questions you would ask. Like, what were you thinking about at that moment? What were you hoping for? So if your partner is stuck, try and help them find where the story will go. We're on time. This is amazing. Okay, so I'm going to give you guys about 10 minutes each. So after 10 minutes, I'll give you a shout to switch over, and then the other person tell their story and the person asks questions.
Should we even go to different rooms, maybe?
I mean, if it sounds better than everyone in a room.
Yeah, we can try it if you want to.
Yes.
Augustine and Elvis, I'm putting you in a breakout room. Okay?
You want to go first?
I'll go first. Do you want to Huggy from letting her hear this?
Like, no, we can look at the next
And when first started college, these stories about like when I went in the street and my career completely, and that was unexpected. Yeah. At this time, I was like fourth year conversation.
Hey, Augustine.
Oh, he made the breakout room.
Yeah, I saw that. I just joined.
Right.
Okay, we can talk then. That's funny. I mean, okay, so we're in a breakout room and we are supposed to talk about a story. And do we have to report then after the break?
I don't know, cause like we're like 10 people, and the story is supposed to be 5 minutes. Maybe not. So like I don't know. Let's maybe like do it for like 2 minutes and then maybe not.
Okay, so
20 minutes. Basically, you have 10 minutes. I have 10 minutes. So we have like 20 minutes.
oh my gosh. This is funny. I mean, I didn't know why. Apparently it doesn't sound very interesting, but anyway.
Yeah, it doesn't. I feel like I don't know. Like I don't know if I like going back to like your past memories, because sometimes it's like really hard to actually go back and find the right story.
Uh-huh.
It's like those prompts, right? some of them I was just like, okay, tell me about a time when a relationship with someone changed, right? I feel like sometimes relationships is just like so personal that it's just something you don't want to share. So I don't think that's like
Yeah, especially someone that you love, right? I think the aspect.
and I think those are the ones that you truly notice, like when those relationships like switch, someone who you truly cared about. Because when I thought about it, that was like the first thing that came to my mind. But then I was like, okay, but I don't want to share this and like.
So what I was just trying to see what is rationale for doing this. So they are trying to give us a training on how to tell a better story, and so then impact fellows can talk about their impact pathways using some storytelling style from this event. Is that what I'm getting?
I think so.
Because in the future, there's gonna be a couple of events for each fellow to talk about his own or her own pathway. But apparently, it will become very soon. So, but anyway, I just feel okay. This is. So, are we supposed to be here? When do you know when this will end? 1 p.m. or 12:30 or what is that?
This is on for like. On it, he scheduled it for 2 hours. So I don't know. Probably we have another hour.
I see. So if we are gonna spend 20 minutes here, and then after this, what's gonna happen next? Will they ask each person to talk about his own stuff in a few minutes?
I guess so.
Oh my gosh, I hate this. Okay.
Do you want to go? I guess at time you took a risk. I think the one that quickly came to mind for me was like, that I can share is during my senior year in college. So I didn't know what I really wanted to do with myself.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're a senior, like time is running out, so you just like need to like do something and apply for things. And so my parents had talked a lot about grad school, but was I really sold into the idea? Probably not that sold into it, but then I was like, you know what? Like, I have nothing else to do right now. So, it's terrible to say, but then I just wasn't sure. And so I spent November doing my GMAT, not my GMAT, my GRE. That okay. December 1st, I had applied and gotten everything done.
Okay.
And then it was time to wait and see where I got in. So I think this is around like March. I started getting into schools, and so I had two choices that had interested me. I actually applied to two schools. So the two schools were Michigan and like MIT.
Okay, Michigan is close to your home, right?
Yeah, and so like I really wanted to take the risk of like I've never been in Michigan. I really wanted to figure things out there and see what was there. And so I was excited to start this like new journey, and that's what my story was about. Like, hey, I would like to like rediscover it and see what it is. And then MIT came to now. And then I was out discussing with my parents. I was like, oh, I really want to go there. And my parents were like, do you think it really makes any sense? Like you leaving like one of the best tech schools to go to another school just because you want to just like have a different experience.
Okay. And then choose to stay.
So eventually I'm like, okay, this is probably a better choice. And in hindsight, yes, it was, because I feel like spending 5 years in Michigan probably would have been like really, really sucky, because it's like in the middle of, there isn't much to do. It's just like a college city.
Okay.
Unlike, and I think I made a lot of friends and connections. Met my girlfriend. I don't think we would have met if I'd gone to Michigan. It would have been a totally different path. But with MIT, the biggest question now was like, who's going to be my professor?
Yeah.
And so met this like young professor. He didn't have any students, and in reality, had no project that he had going at that point in time. But for some reason, I liked him. I'd worked with him for like a few months, for like 4 months. And everyone who I talked to was just like, dude, don't do it. It's a bad idea. Just like find someone who's established. And and go there. But I don't know. I feel like I wanted to take a risk,
Mm-hmm.
and it's hard to say, but like I feel like I was so oblivious to like some of these things like going in, where the risks I hadn't really like thought everything out through, where it's like, okay, like done my risk analysis, where it's like, okay, like if this goes really bad, it's gonna be like really bad and like this might end my career. And if it went well, then it would be really well, because like someone has like a lot of energy, like all these things. But I decided to go with this guy because I just felt what he wanted to do and who he was as a person aligned with me, and so I went with him, and I took that risk, which for sure was going to have like a big impact on the outcome of my academic life.
Yeah, so you know what? I guess I tell you earlier already, but I'm not sure you still remember that. I also applied to CEE and MIT. I actually spoke with your PI before the application, and in the application I put two names. Actually, the first name I put was Lydia. Second name was your advisor. So my application was never in your advisor's evaluation pool, and that's also one of the reasons I never got in. But we could there is opportunity that we could become lab colleagues 5 years ago. But anyway, since you know your advisor and I are in the same department and McGill, and he knows my the senior people in my lab pretty well. We actually talk a lot. I actually before I submit the application, I spoke with his advisor. Looks like. But in anyway, there's a story. But I really think it's definitely a risk for you to just join a very junior PI, especially you did an undergrad at MIT, so I guess you will have a lot of other options at the department. But looking back, you know, this probably would be the best decision you have ever made professionally. So,
Yeah.
and you're also doing a startup. From your PhD research. So I think that's really good for you.
Yeah, no, it worked out. It was just like, I don't know. It somehow worked out. Like you're saying, ended up being a really good decision, but it could have been a really bad decision.
I can imagine. Yeah, it can go wrong in many ways. But I heard he's putting up his tenure package very soon. So he's already associate without tenure, but I think he's gonna get tenure for sure because he has so many fundings from what I heard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's really good. So you are one of his first students, and you help him get tenure. If you use your paper to submit to the package.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess for me, the biggest decision that changed everything was that I was initially I was initially admitted to a PhD program in China, and I actually studied there for a month before I quit, and I just feel it's so wrong to just continue to stay in the same school in the same country from undergrad to PhD, and then I just chose to quit, and just. After 1 month, I just quit from my program and I was searching for programs outside, and then went to McGill, went to Canada, and then to the States. So looking back, I think this is actually very huge decision for me, both personally and professionally. I see a lot of my colleagues. They just finished up their PhDs in the same group in my undergrad university, and then to stay in China, move to another university, become either assistant professor or lecturers. But to me, it doesn't sound fun. I don't like that. So I just choose to come to Canada and come to the States. It's a huge decision, and couldn't see my family for a couple of years. But looking back, I still feel maybe this is gonna be a good decision for me professionally. And I think if I never joined Cornell for my PhD, apparently I wouldn't be getting the Schmidt Science Fellowship. So yeah, so looking back, definitely a lot of things just happened because of a decision I made. Yeah, so I guess this would be something I want to definitely very risky because I don't get any job offers or any offer letters. At the time, I decided to quit from my PhD program. Yeah, but I guess it's a rewarding experience looking back. But definitely a lot of things can go wrong. Yeah, so yeah,
I feel like what these stories tell us is like sometimes like no risk, no reward.
yeah,
You always have to take some risk in your life. If you're just like very conservative, it's like really hard to like find something I feel like you truly value and you see that it's like super worthwhile. Because you had to like risk it. You had to feel like, hey, like man, like what am I doing?
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I also feel actually for both of us, we choose to quit from the MCSC program. That's also very risky. But anyway, we made it. So, but apparently we couldn't talk about this in public. You from the MCSC people say, okay, the biggest decision we ever made, is just to go.
Yeah, I was actually thinking that, but then like yeah.
No, don't say that. That would be doesn't look good, right?
It doesn't. Yeah.
Especially these are the last couple of days. So your new fellowship will start from July 1st, right?
No, so I actually moved it again. So they're
Huh?
very flexible. I want to stop this, and then I just want to take like 2 weeks off.
Okay.
So I just like figure out how to like tell them like, hey, bye.
I see.
And there was like one thing else I wanted me to do, which I haven't done yet. I actually need to write it once I'm back in Boston. Probably will take me like a few days to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a summary of all the work that I've done and like all the people I've connected with, so that the next person can take over. Where has she been? Because she hasn't said anything to me in the last like 2 weeks.
I think she's just busy. And so for your case, someone is going to take over your work, so you have to write that kind of a summary or report. But for my case, I say to them, I don't need your salary, just pay my insurance, and then I will help you mentor the ongoing students and still kind of affiliated with MCSC. So I'm not sure whether I need to write a report, but
Oh no, you probably don't. You're probably going to be doing. It's basically you're doing the same work, right? Because like there are certain people that they were like, go work with the professor,
mm-hmm.
and then just do that. You're basically doing the same thing. You're totally fine.
I don't know yet, but I think I will figure out on Friday. It's just pretty funny, and apparently I don't think they care that much about the program, because for me, I looks like they just get so Jeff apparently doesn't show up for a long time, and Elsa, she has her full-time job to do as well. So it looks like it's, Jeremy trying to run all of this. But anyway, I just feel we are just, what is MCSC? I just feel okay. It's just trying. It's a good idea, but a lot of things can be done, should be done, but haven't. But anyway.
Fair. I think you're right. I think it probably needs another like people who just are doing this like full time.
Yeah.
Because like
exactly.
being a professor is actually a lot of work,
mm-hmm.
and then you're basically then doing this part time. So you're like
Yeah.
literally drowning to like ensure that things are running.
Yeah, that's true.
And so it becomes very hands off. And like if you're a fellow who doesn't like push things on their own, you could really like be screwed, because it's like a year has been spent.
Yeah.
Very
that's
soon
true.
it's gonna be like, what have you done in that year?
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like we've really almost spent a year. Now you have like 12 months to find the next gig and to be done. Like very soon people are going to be told you have to leave.
Yeah.
I know people have like done papers, right? So it's, these people are like mentioned, like Glenn is like, oh yeah, I started doing this 2 years goes by so fast. I just don't think it's enough time. Remember when we were talking, I was like, okay, like I really don't think it's enough time for people to actually do deep research, because setting up a new lab facilities just takes so much time.
That's true.
In reality, probably they really get going end of this year, and it's like you have 6 months left.
Oh yeah. And also, I'm not sure about they don't set very good guidelines on their expected outcomes, and they just say, okay, have this kind of collaboration or the projects going, and then they would just say to pitch this to the industries, and but anyway,
They're learning. I think like it'll take some time. Probably in the next 2 to 3 years, that's when it'll really take off. You need to like learn from like initial fellows,
yeah.
see what doesn't work, and then just go from there.
Yeah, I think according to our experience, we get 8 fellows at the beginning, and right now you and I will be leaving, and then I think Sam apparently don't know what he's doing, and who do we get? Laura. Laura's have
She like
fertility
literally
leave.
just became pregnant.
Yeah, so we have 4 people, and Paloma, I don't think she likes the MCSC a lot, so we end up getting 3 people. So I'm not sure how to move forward, but that's up to them. We already we have our own sense to pursue.
Yeah, like that's fair. I think like what they need to do is like the new class, they should start staffing people on the same project. You need at least a few. There's so much you do.
That's true.
It needs to be collaboration. So right now we start off with so many pathways, and I actually think if maybe we'd actually started off with like 2 or 3, and then it was just like a focused team effort on like getting those going.
Yeah.
And continue to expand, then would have made sense. Because like right now what we did was like we tried to be very thin, cover everything.
Mm-hmm.
But then they're moving very slowly because there's not enough manpower to actually drive them.
Mm-hmm. But let's see. It's up to them to decide who to recruit, how many people they want to put in different projects. So right now we just be nice and attend the meetings virtually if possible. Oh, by the way, are you going to attend the next meeting?
What is that? Let me see when it is.
I think it's the week after July 4th. So July 5th, there wouldn't be a meeting.
July 13th. Oh, I see it. So maybe, like, my girlfriend and I, so she starts work on the 1st as well. We wanted to take some time off, go somewhere and do things. So it just depends on, like, when we decide we're going to go do that.
Yeah, makes sense. Same situation for me. I just don't think this.
I think you'd get so mad if we didn't show up.
Yeah, I think so. Especially right now, you're still we are in a transition stage, so maybe be there.
Yeah, I feel like we have to be there, or like I have to have COVID or something. Not sure.
But yeah. Anyway, I just feel it's an interesting experience for the MCSC Impact Fellow. The title sounds good, but apparently I don't think I did a lot of sense for them. I just feel it's time to think. If I want to pursue a faculty position, this is definitely not the position I should stay in forever.
I also feel bad about it. I don't know, like, I think I could have, I don't know. Like, it's really hard because things would always shift and change, and sometimes you didn't have all the information.
Yeah.
It's like you focus on one thing, and then it's like, 2 weeks later, then it's like, okay, that really doesn't matter. Then you go to something else. So it's like.
So that means pool management. That is the best definition for pool management. They don't have a clue about what they want to do, so makes sense. I guess we have 27 seconds to move to the main room.
Let's probably jump
okay,
back.
sure. Yeah. 我们这边估计 我们就进 main room 了，亲爱的啊。
It all worked out. That's like the story arc.
Yeah.
Do we have a lot of stuff?
No, that's fine. The lunch is waiting for us.
Okay.
That's the only, yeah,
他们应该马上就去吃 lunch 了，我们就最后说几句就好了，估计。
you can do it.
Still being mysterious on Slack.
What?
Still being mysterious on Slack.
Oh, yeah.
The only thing is I need a lot of time so that Sydney can explain high fantasy versus low fantasy. So we'll need
We
to
don't know if
allocate
the
time for
opposite
that.
is flow yet.
Well, that's what I'm
Yeah,
wondering.
sounds like this
If you put that adjective in front, it sort of implies that
Yeah.
it's an additional descriptor beyond, maybe not low, but average, mid fantasy or something. So we'll get into that.
You can give a presentation on different types of fantasy.
Exactly.
I'll do it, don't tempt.
I would come to
That could be your raw presentation. You know, like,
I know, I think Sydney has a lot of knowledge I want to hear. She was talking about numerical solutions and
I have Samuel L. Jackson, Taylor Swift, and Retta and Bowser from Mario, all in a presentation about.
马上就好了，亲爱的啊。
Amazing.
And
I want to hear it.
So do I.
All right, we're just missing Glenn. Why don't we go ahead and start?
So, how was that?
Very
Great, yeah.
Awesome. I think that is one of the most important things when you work on stories or presentations is you want to run it by somebody else and get their take on it. It is worth its weight in gold. So even if sometimes it can feel a bit awkward and weird, it's worth doing. All that is left now is the bit where I try and encourage someone to share the story that they've been working on with the rest of the group. Before I do that, because I'm going to take about 5 minutes of lunch, I wanted to very quickly talk a little bit about what this storytelling framework looks like when you're talking about your research, so that we can kind of bridge these two things before we break. So, yay. Okay, so a story of research. Now I'm going to use the same framework I used before, and I'm going to tell you the broad stroke story of research. And I always borrow my sister's research. She's my pet scientist. She's a consultant rheumatologist, University of Oxford in England, so studies people with psoriatic arthritis. So, in research, there is a problem. For my sister, the problem is that when patients present for the first time with psoriatic arthritis, they are in a lot of pain, they're scared, and the standard treatment for someone that just shows up is to give them all the medication that you could possibly give them in one go. That was how the NHS in England treated psoriatic arthritis. They say, we're going to give you everything as quickly as we can to try and slow the disease down, get it under control. And then after that, we'll calibrate what medications you should actually be on. The problem with that is you get a person with a new disease who's quite scared and you throw a bunch of medication at them. And sometimes the side effects are worse than the disease they were having in the first place. It's also expensive. And so my sister asked herself, that's your inciting incident. I asked myself, is there a way we could do this better? So she asked herself, is there a way that we could, instead of giving everybody all the drugs in one go, can we treat to target? Can we take into account data from patients all over the UK, take into facts their age, their demographics, what type of arthritis they're presenting with, how long they've had symptoms, and calculate what kind of drug might be the best for them. Treat them this way instead, with 1 or 2 drugs instead of all of them, and then look at the data from that 5 years down the line. How did they do? How did their disease progress? What's at stake? This is exactly the same as it is in the storytelling unit. You need to communicate why your research matters, right? What's at stake is kind of obvious, right? Like these people's lives, their comfort, how their disease progresses. Not just the individual person though, like how people all over the UK, even people who aren't in my sister's cohort in her study, how they will be treated. That's at stake too. The NHS is publicly funded, so money is at stake. Giving people a bunch of medication they don't need is expensive, and that matters. So that's what's at stake in this research. What you learn, these are the results, right? So she's going to come back and say, okay, we did this research over 5 years. These are my findings. And they did learn something, right? They did find a way to treat certain patients more effectively off the bat. Not all patients. Some patients you need to kind of rush in still and try to slow things down. But for some patients, they were able to make it better. Now, research does not resolve the way stories do. So now, it's the state of the problem now. We're still learning, right? We're still researching. And so when you finish your story of the research that you've done, you're not going to say, and then I solved psoriatic arthritis, right? It's still an ongoing concern. But there is something different from the beginning. You learned something. Or maybe you didn't learn anything. Maybe you learned that your research was wrong and you need to go back and redesign the study. And then, because research is cyclical and this is the nature of science, you go right back to the beginning. What's the problem now? And then you might present what you've found out so far and be like, so next my new study is this. So that is how we connect that simple framework to how you might talk about research. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. All right, I wanted to put that in just so that you know that I'm still talking about science and presentations, even though I want you to talk about your feelings and stories. I'm going to put up this standard story map, and then I'm going to ask if there is anyone who would like to share the story that they were working on with the rest of the group. This also is open to folks online as well. Glenn?
Sure.
Awesome. Glenn, I'm going to make you stand up and tell your story. Round of applause for Glenn.
Are you doing should I just jump in the story?
Just jump on in.
Okay. So I'm in the house, my house, getting ready for dinner, and my daughter is sitting there screaming. Really because she's bored, not because there's anything really wrong going on. She just likes the sound of her voice, and it makes that, when she goes really loud, it shakes her throat a little bit, and it echoes off the walls, and I get a little irritated, and it's all very funny. She really enjoys that. And so, in our house, we try to reduce screen time, and so to give her ample boredom time so she can kind of figure out what to do with her life, right? We let her have a little bit of those things, but this is one of those moments where I've kind of had enough, and she is going very far. And we're gonna barbecue. So I have this idea that to maybe push her boundaries a little bit, challenge her a little bit. And so I say, Tanya, you're gonna help me cook dinner. And she starts complaining. And I say, go get on your shoes. And she's still complaining. And she's telling, Dad, but I want to do what I want to do. She's been doing nothing with her time. She's, and so, but she's putting on her shoes and then she's tying the shoes. So we live on the third floor of a small apartment complex. And so that's the top floor. And we're in the top and there's the window out looking and she's staring down at her shoes and she's starting to come to terms, I think, with that we're going. Because she said, Dad, but why are we going outside? Because whenever I ask her to help, it's pasta or something we're cooking indoors. And so I don't really tell her. And she finishes getting on her shoes and things are starting to get quieter, I think, as she's digesting, thinking about what we're going to do. And so I hold her hand and we walk down the stairs and we go outside. And and I grab the 20-pound Costco bag of coal and the chimney that helps light the coal. And I bring her and we start walking over. And again, no questions. I can tell the gears are just turning. And so, the boredom screaming is gone. And so I bring her over. We have this little fenced off area to keep the kids out. And there's some brick formations where we can start fires. And I open the little gate and let her actually come in. And children are not allowed in there. And so I kind of see her eyes light up that she's going to help with the barbecue. And I put down the chimney into this, into the metal grating between all the bricks. And it's about chest height for her. And I say, okay, Tanya, pour the coal. And so there's this big bag, and it's full of just black turtle. She's wearing her pink dress, She does not ask questions. She's just like,
我把这放旁边，帮你一会儿收拾吧。我就怕他待会儿叫到我，待会儿听一下啊。
And she sees their son like kind of straggling on the edge, she kind of like
没事没事，我把这个扔这儿。
and
现在就是
charcoal is
葛丽的什么自我分享。
has it on her hands, it's on her dress. Nothing. No words coming out. She's just in the zone. And so, okay, now we have to light the fire, light a little fire so the coals can burn. So can you rip off the piece of paper, rip off the trunk of the bag and put it in,
把电视收起来是吧？这个。
you don't rip the bags randomly, that's all the things that you
那我先吃点东西，你吃了吗？
and grabs the thing and she puts it underneath the coal chimney. And I've been like kind of leaving it open so that she could tell me no, like at some point. But I'm not giving her the option. I'm just if she pushes back, I'll let her. But she's not pushing back at all. So I like the fires. The child blocks are too hard, but and we give it a couple of minutes as the heat's rising and the coals begin to ignite but she hasn't asked if she could go and play, which the playground is right next to the coal. She's just sitting there watching it build with me. And after about 10 minutes, the flame is shooting out of the top, and I can watching as she's concerned. And I say, Tanya, now we have to pour the coals and smooth them out to a flat layer so we can cook. And she's okay. And I pour the coals because it's a little bit dangerous, and I say, okay, now I want you to move the coals. And she's a little nervous. Hey, go get the shovel, which is about a foot taller than she is, and and move the coals around until they're in a flat layer, like a sheet. She said, okay, and gets the shovel, puts it on her shoulders, and moves the coals around till the thing, and puts the shovel down, and asks, Dad, did I do a good job? So yes, you did. We'll do a great job cooking.
没事没事。
Feel free to go
吃
play.
了是吧？
She goes to the playground.
哎，非常。
Like, that's adorable. I was also so stressed. I was like, oh god. I was like, she goes into the place where the fire is. But it didn't turn out the way I thought. What do you guys think of Glen's story?
没有。
I like it. I love the level of detail. It helps me visualize it.
Very descriptive, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I love the vision of like the girl in the pink dress with the like schmutz. And also like I feel like it was a really lovely journey from like the two of you like frustrated with each other at the start. Like and you're also like the physical space is important. Like you're upstairs, you're in clothes, and she's screaming, and you've had enough. And then you literally move into like an open space and are transformed into like this like permissive, empowering dad. And like you're having this great time together. Like it was such a smooth I feel like I recognize those kind of parenting moments where you're like, oh, I'm gonna, and then you like find a way out, and it's really peaceful. I really like that. Any other thoughts?
I liked that because I don't know that kids scream because they're bored. So I felt like you did a good job catering to someone like me who doesn't have that knowledge that happens. Well, and throughout, like that, and I don't know that kids are sometimes they're super screamy and then they get real quiet. Like things like that might not surprise people, but it would surprise me. So I think you did a good job.
咱这会儿电器就先搬上去呗，这些。
It felt very accessible. And I
洗衣机、洗碗机什么这些东西，电器先搬上去。
a shift in behavior was like very, very clear all the way through, right? That like he found a way to engage her without screams.
I did wonder how old she was. I don't think that's something you said.
Oh, okay.
And so, like, I inferred it as you went along, but I couldn't help you, like, because I've often said, like, in particular, before kids can really talk, like, they're just as they're learning, it's remarkable how much they can scream. I've said, like, if I were to try and do, like, they can just scream for like a half hour. Like if any of us were to do that, we would just pass out. I don't really know how they do that. So, anyways, but that's what I first thought she was little. But then, as you said, she could talk and stuff like that. So,
interesting, yeah, because I started with my 6-year-old with Paloma and then changed that.
Yeah.
And I just forgot to bring it up. Interesting.
No, like I said, we'll figure it out. But But that was, I think, one of the questions that I wondered about. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, I had that same moment. I kind of went with it as you described. It was like, I was like, this is a baby in a high chair.
Yeah,
And
that's
then
what
I
I
was like,
thought,
oh, she's
too.
picking up a bag of coal.
She's tying her shoes also.
Yeah.
Talking. I wasn't sure he was even talking.
No, you did say it before, but I guess that.
Yeah.
对啊，看没能听完了。
But he did like incorporate so many things that we just talked
Panama,
about. I'm
how would
impressed
you-
about that. It's like it changed the story a lot.
The thing that I wondered, and this is really grasping at straws, right? That it was overall really good. You did a good job with the scene and the summary versus scene stuff. I wonder though, like out of the list here, the what's at stake. Like you talked a little bit about that, but I wonder if that's something to kind of just flesh out a bit more.
We were talking about that, like,
Yeah.
how do I describe like that? Because it was her transformation,
Yeah.
and so there's some about like,
我是今天
well,
从外头
there's
请的人做了个
misgivings,
培
like,
训，
will she, that's why I want to add the part of like, she could say no, like,
刚前面一直是外面请了一个人教怎
like,
么
but
讲
and there's
story。
danger present, but she's not saying no, which is kind of a surprising,
Yeah.
cool thing.
I think you could also make it a little bit about you as like I really like the ending where you're looking out at her playing and just kind of like the shift in like from being a little frustrated to being like that's my daughter, like she's having fun and like yeah, I don't know if what's at stake from your perspective is kind of like I don't know. Yeah, how do I make this human into a nice human to be around? I don't know.
Yeah, we were talking a little bit about that because the first time they told me that it was surprising that she was so capable.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
What's
true,
wrong?
but maybe, well, I'm also part of the for me sometimes that they are more capable than what we think we are. So we are kind of the problem, maybe.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, not them. And if this is a situation, if he push her, or not push her, but like let her do something a little bit more dangerous than usual. And she did it perfectly. Sorry about that. So the stake maybe was like what we think, what you thought about her.
I think I agree with you. I think there are ways to kind of punch up the like maybe at the beginning we feel a bit more of your frustration. Like you said like I've had enough, but like you could sort of say like I gotta like get dinner. I'm trying to stop screaming. Like I know I've got a bunch of stuff to get done. Like it seems like you're on your own in this. Like there's no co-parent. So right, like you're like there's no one that you can get to come help. Like how can I make this work? Right? There's that we like if we can see a little bit more of it, like I've got to come up with something. The other element is the idea that this story really empowers her to do stuff. And so the question is like, are you always that kind of parent? Do you want to be more that kind of parent? Like, do you ever, like, is it sometimes we think we're going to be a kind of parent and then we have a kid and it's not quite that? Like, I always thought I would be a kind of parent that lets my kid build a barbecue when they're 6, but then it turns out I'm really scared about her hurting herself and like today's the day you do it. So I think those two elements, like one is like how you were feeling in terms of like the frustration of like she won't stop screaming and I don't want to just park her in front of the television. And then also like what kind of parent you wanted to be are become by the end of the story. I think those are two things you could do.
Yeah, for me, sometimes I like think like, I just need you to work with me. Like sometimes I'm like, we just gotta get on the same team. Like I need a little bit, I can help you, you need to help me sometimes. Like, yeah, it's something, and those are like my favorite moments when I feel like we are like working together. So like just, yeah, feeling like you sync up again.
All right, I know I went over, but I'm really grateful that.
Yeah,
so we're not meeting next week, right? So would it be okay if I did like half hour or something of the session afterwards? I know, or do we need to get into presentations?
For what we start in 2 weeks?
Yeah.
Is that what I mean?
Yeah, 2 weeks.
You do whatever you want.
Okay, cool. So my plan for next time is I want to kind of pull together some of the parallels from Jeremy's presentation and how storytelling works. I want to show you this presentation from my friend that makes really good use of slides, does a really good job, so I want to share that with you. And then I was kind of working on, basically, I guess sort of like the tips and tricks of things to keep in your back pocket. Like we talked a bit about this when we were having lunch last time about like, we talked about big humor and things. I think that could be one of the scariest things, right? Like how do I make a joke? And then I can't remember the person's name that told the joke about being German.
Florian.
Yeah, Florian, okay. So I was thinking about like how that joke is structured, and I feel like there are ways that if you're not a natural stand-up comedian, which is fine, you can structure jokes in. So I was gonna try and come up with some like, if you can't be funny, do this. Some sort of like, some fail-safe that I'll have ready for 2 weeks' time, and then maybe after that we start going into presentation.
The next week, in 2 weeks is when we go to sort of the regular 12 to 1:30. And I think, which is what I hope for these times, but there was some other stuff going on. So I think with that, we'll probably get lunch at the beginning.
Okay.
But we could bring it in here, and then, for example, you could start presenting while people are eating. And so I think we'll shift the format a little bit. And on the 12th, we have an industry advisory board meeting that goes 11 to 12:30 or 1. So I might just be joining a little bit after that. Yeah. So, but everyone else here.
Right. Thank you guys for being game today.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, remember lunch.
Thank you.
It's always fabulous. Apple choice, so.
And this was.
Aw, thanks for the applause hands, guys.
Okay.